It was evening in Kiwana City, the sky melting into soft shades of orange, and the distant rhythm of drums drifting through the streets. Niara, a young painter, stood by the window of her small studio. Her hands were stained with colors, blue, green, and a hint of gold, the very hues of her dreams. Across the street, someone was playing a flute. Its melody carried the same calmness one feels when walking barefoot over warm, whispering sand. Niara looked toward the source, a tall, lean boy sitting under a stream of fading light. His face held a serenity so deep, it seemed he was in conversation with the wind itself. For the first time, Niara felt that silence, too, could be music. When the flute finally grew still, the wind brushed through Niara's hair, and in that moment, it whispered a name. Eliah. She startled. It was a name she had never heard before, yet her heart missed a beat. She looked outside once more. The boy was gone, but his melody lingered in the air. And for the first time, the word formed softly on her lips. Eliah. The next morning, the sun shone over Kiwana City as if it had learned something from the silence of the previous night. Niara sat outside her studio, brushing the same colors across her canvas, orange, gold, and blue. But today, her hands carried a new feeling, as if a name still floated in the air, Eliah. Amid the noise of the market, the laughter in the streets, and the playful shouts of children, Niara heard that same flute again. Her feet began to move on their own, as if the wind itself was guiding her. She reached a small square, where people had gathered beneath a tall tree. In the center sat the same boy, Eliah, dressed in a black kurta, a small wooden earring in his ear, and the flute resting gently in his hands. His eyes were closed, yet his face glowed in the sunlight. Niara felt every note sink deep into her, a melody not made of words, but of heartbeats. When the flute fell silent, Elias slowly opened his eyes. Niara looked away quickly, but the wind brushed through her hair again. A faint smile touched Eliah's lips, as if the wind had whispered his secret to him. "You saw me that evening, didn't you?" he asked softly. Niara turned toward him, startled. Eliah's voice was calm. "The wind always tells me when someone truly sees." And in that moment, between the flute, the wind, and two souls, a promise was born. Silent, fragile, yet true. The nights in Kiwana City were like dreams, filled with neon lights, music, and the scent of earth carried by the wind. Amid those glowing streets, Niara and Eliah often found themselves crossing paths. No one had called the other, no promises were made, yet the very air of the city seemed to draw them closer with every breath. When Eliah played his flute, Niara would capture its melody in colors on her canvas. Sometimes, they simply sat together, beneath a tree whose leaves rustled as if whispering stories only the wind could tell. Eliah would say, "The wind remembers everything. The words we never speak, it carries them." And Niara would laugh softly, then it knows more than we do? He'd smile, his eyes glowing faintly under the street lights. Yes, that's why when I play, the wind calls to you. In that moment, a spark would light in Niara's eyes, as if someone had kindled a small flame within her heart. The night grew deeper, and the city seemed to pause. People retreated indoors, the noise faded, only the sound of the flute remained, Niara's quiet smile, and the wind, dancing gently between them. In that silence, Eliah whispered, "Maybe we've met before, in another life, within another breeze." Niara lowered her gaze, but her heart replied softly, "Perhaps it was the same wind that brought us together again." And in the heart of Kiwana City, amid the shimmering lights, two souls began to dance, silent, yet eternal. A strange sadness hung over Kiwana City that day. Instead of sunlight, the sky was wrapped in clouds. And the same wind that once told stories of love now seemed to be hiding something. Niara sat in her studio before an unfinished canvas. Eliah's face was slowly taking shape on it. The melody of his flute echoed in her mind. But today those notes brought not joy, only loneliness. A soft knock came at the door. It was Eliah, but the light that once lived on his face was gone. He held his flute in one hand, though his fingers were still. "Niara," he said quietly, "I have to go." Her hands froze. "Go? Where?" "To the other side of the river, to an old village, where my father's spirit waits for me." The wind fell silent. Even the leaves on the trees stopped moving, as if time itself had paused. Only one question escaped her lips, "Will you come back?" Eliah smiled faintly. "The wind has promised, when it flows back this way, I'll return with it." He placed the flute gently into her hands. "If ever the wind falls silent, play this. I'll hear it, wherever I am." Then he turned to leave. The wind brushed against his cloak, a soft, sorrowful farewell. Niara closed her eyes and felt that the wind suddenly seemed a little emptier. Kiwana City had changed, or perhaps it was Niara who had. Where once the notes of a flute had lived, now there was silence, so deep that even the wind seemed to sigh. Every evening, Niara sat by her studio window, the same flute resting in her hands. But no melody ever came from it. For music is born from the heart. And hers had drifted away with the wind. The children of the city still played. Walls still bloomed with color. But Niara's shades had faded. Only black and blue now filled her canvas. The colors of pain and remembrance. Sometimes, she'd place her fingers gently over the flute's holes, calling softly into the air. Asterisk asterisk Eliah, if you can hear me, answer once asterisk asterisk. And in those moments, as dusk fell, a tender breeze would pass her window, whispering faintly, asterisk asterisk I am listening, asterisk asterisk. Niara would startle, but no one was there. Only the flute, still pulsing faintly with the rhythm of her heart. And so, day by day, she began to speak to the wind. Perhaps it was madness. Or perhaps it was that sacred kind of love, where even separation feels like worship. The lights of Kiwana City had dimmed, but in Niara's eyes, a single hope still shimmered. That one day, the wind would bring him back. That evening in Kiwana City, the light felt strange. No sun, no clouds, yet pink veils shimmered across the sky, as if the wind itself were celebrating something unseen. Niara opened her canvas again, though not with her heart. Only to keep her hands busy, as if painting could silence the ache inside her. But just as she lifted her brush, a soft gust of wind swept through the window, and the flute on her table rolled to the floor. A faint note escaped. The same one Eliah used to play at dusk. Niara froze. Her heartbeat stumbled, uneven and quick. The breeze carried a familiar scent of earth, sunlight, and his smile. She picked up the flute, her hands trembling. But her heart whispered, asterisk, play it once, just once. Asterisk. The first note came. Gentle, light, like the breath of the wind. Then the second. Then the third. And suddenly, the paintings on her walls began to tremble softly, as if the colors had come alive again. Sunlight poured into the room, and with the wind came a voice. You remembered me, didn't you? Tears spilled from Niara's eyes. With each note she played, her soul grew lighter, freer, as though Eliah were truly there. In the wind, in the light, circling quietly around her heart. In that moment, Niara understood. Love is not bound to the body, but to the breath. And when the breath dissolves into the wind, the beloved never leaves. They simply become the air itself. Night descended gently over Kiwana City. Street lamps flickered to life, and through the hum of distant drums, the familiar echo of a flute drifted once more through the air. Niara sat on the studio floor, exhausted. The colors on her canvas had dried long ago, yet the flute still rested in her hands. Then, a soft breeze slipped through the window, as if a hidden door had opened, somewhere between reality and a dream. Niara closed her eyes, and when she opened them, she was no longer in Kiwana City. Before her stretched a golden field, the sun sinking slowly beyond the horizon. And in the wind, that same familiar melody, the one Eliah used to play. He stood there, just as she remembered him, light in his eyes, a smile on his lips, and the flute in his hand. "I knew you'd come one day," he said softly. Tears welled in Niara's eyes. "This is a dream, isn't it?" Eliah smiled gently. "This is the place where dreams and reality meet. Where love is free from the limits of time." Niara stepped forward, reaching for his hand, but felt only the wind. Warm and tender, as if the air itself was his touch. Eliah lifted the flute to his lips. A melody rose, and with it, the colors of the sky began to change. Niara felt it deep within her. There was no sorrow in this tune, only the promise of return. And when the final note faded, Eliah's image dissolved into the wind. Only his voice remained, whispering softly, "When the wind touches you, know that I am near." When morning settled over Kiwana City, the city felt somehow different. The breeze was soft, yet it carried a familiar fragrance, as if someone had mixed the gentle notes of a flute into the air itself. Niara opened her eyes and found herself back in her studio. The flute lay quietly on the floor, and on her canvas, new colors bloomed. One she had never painted before. Golden, pale blue, and as transparent as the wind. She rose slowly and stepped closer to the canvas. A face had emerged. Eliah's, not painted in pigments, but shaped by the very touch of air. Tears welled in Niara's eyes. But this time, they weren't of sorrow. They were tears of light. The kind born only after loss transforms into peace. She picked up the flute. For the first time, there was no fear in her heart. She placed it to her lips, and the melody that flowed was the one she had heard in her dream. The streets of Kiwana City filled with that sound. People stopped. Children fell silent. The wind wove the tune gently through every corner of the city. Leaves trembled on the trees. Ripples shimmered across the water. And in the golden rays of the sky, it seemed as though Eliah's name was written. Niara smiled and closed her eyes. "I know, you're here," she whispered. The wind brushed softly against her cheek, and the final note of the flute dissolved into the air. In that moment, Niara understood. Love never truly ends. It simply changes form, and lives on, within the wind, ****. The people of Kiwana City began to notice. The colors of their city were changing. The old, faded murals on the walls now shimmered with a new light. Niara was no longer just a painter. She had learned to speak the language of the wind. Wherever her brush moved, the air would ripple softly, and within her colors a melody would hide. The same tune Eliah once played on his flute. People gathered around her canvas, quietly. She never spoke. Yet everyone could feel that someone unseen was speaking through her art. Someone who could not be seen, but could be felt deep within the heart. One day, a little girl asked, "Niara ba, why do your colors dance?" Niara smiled and replied, "Because they're the children of the wind. When the wind is happy, the colors begin to dance." The girl tilted her head. "So, can the wind talk?" Niara whispered gently, "Yes, but you need a heart to hear it, not ears." That evening, as the sun set, Niara lifted her newest canvas toward the sky. There was no face, no landscape. Only a soft, flowing line, as if someone had drawn love itself in a single breath. And when she closed her eyes, Eliah's voice returned once more. "This city now sings our song, Niara. In every breath of the wind, we live on." A tender light filled her eyes, and on her lips bloomed a quiet truth. Love never perishes. It simply becomes color, and stays alive forever. That day, Kiwana City was strangely silent. No drums, no flute. Only the wind, slowly dancing around Niara's studio. Across the city, her paintings were on display. In every canvas lived the hues of the wind, the whisper of Eliah's flute, and the quiet pulse of Niara's soul. People stood before them in awe, for whenever someone stepped closer, it felt as if the colors were breathing. That night, Niara sat alone in her studio. Before her lay the flute, the one Eliah had given her. Through the window, the wind entered, soft, warm, familiar. She raised the flute to her lips and played the same melody she had once heard. Eliah's melody. As the final note drifted into the air, tiny lights began to swirl around her. The colors on her hands began to glow. Her canvases shimmered alive, and the wind turned fragrant, as if embracing her gently. Niara closed her eyes, and a single word escaped her lips. "Eliah." Then, stillness. The flute slipped from her hand to the floor, but it made no sound. Only a tender gust rose, drifting out through the window, vanishing into the sky. The next morning, the people came. The studio was empty. Only one new mural had appeared on the wall. Two shadows, one made of wind, one of light, joining together to form a single heart. And in the air lingered the faint hum of a flute, as if two souls had finally become one. Morning descended upon Kiwana City. The first golden ray of sunlight touched the sky, as if someone had painted a new shade of love on God's own canvas. People walked down the street, where Niara's studio once stood. Now, there was only an open field, and at its center grew a baobab tree, its branches shimmering with streaks of color, as though the wind itself had shaped it. Every morning, a soft breeze passed through there, carrying with it the faint sound of a flute. No one knew where the melody came from, but whoever heard it felt something stir within, a long-lost moment awakening in the heart. One day, a little girl came by, a brush in her hand, wonder in her eyes. She drew a heart on the tree's trunk and wrote beneath it, "When the wind spoke, two souls became one." Suddenly, the breeze picked up, gentle, fragrant, familiar. The leaves of the baobab swayed, as if someone unseen had smiled upon her. They say that in that very moment, beneath the shade of the baobab, two shadows appeared, a girl wrapped in colors, and a boy woven from wind. They circled each other slowly. No words, no touch. Only a melody. A melody of love that never ended. Even today, the air of Kiwana City carries that scent. Of colors, of music, of memory. And every sunset, when the wind pauses for a breath, the people whisper, "It's Eliah and Niara's promise," still alive in every breeze.